Considerations when buying microgreen packaging, written July 29th, 2024 by Garrett Corwin and narrated by Garrett Corwin. The only goal of packaging is to hold your product, right? Wrong. If that statement were correct, we would put our microgreens in a cardboard shoebox and put it on display, but we can't. Your packaging must balance 5 factors: preservation, aesthetics, cost, ergonomics, and, if you care, environmental impact. In an ideal world, your packaging would be transparent to show off your microgreens. It would maximize shelf life. It would be easy and intuitive to open and use. It would cost next to nothing, and its production would benefit the environment rather than hurting the environment. We will dive into why you can't win in all 5 categories, but first, a bit about me. I'm the founder and owner of Piedmont Microgreens, an indoor farm in Durham, North Carolina, where we grow about 400 trays of microgreens per week with a team of just 2 full-time employees. Over the years, we've sold to chefs, wholesalers, schools, and of course, farmers markets. We're also Harmonized GAP certified for food safety with the USDA, which helps us meet the standards required by our large distributors and retail partners. I'm also the co-founder of Microgreen Manager, but we'll touch on that more at the end. So the variables to consider, let's dive into each one a little bit more. Preservation. High quality microgreens can survive for at least 2 weeks from harvest for everything except for, in my opinion, basil. Hardier varieties like sunflower and pea shoots can last a month or longer. Your packaging must be airtight if you want to hit these benchmarks. This will prevent the product from drying out and wilting. Likewise, steer clear of materials that soak up moisture, such as cardboard packaging, which, although is great for things like mushrooms, is not great for most other produce. Any moisture will cause the microgreens to mold in the packaging. Aesthetics. Consumers shop with their eyes. We want aesthetic packaging, but also want it to display our microgreens well. Aesthetic packaging is generally symmetric, transparent, neutrally colored. It sits upright on the shelf and has a large front face to display your product well. We all know the feeling of opening up a brand new iPhone or Mac. Apple's unboxing experience is so special that we often keep the packaging for years. Transfer that thinking when picking your microgreen packaging. Does the material feel good in your hands? Does the plastic have a weird yellow tinge? A large front face on the package will show off your microgreens. A large front face will be highly visible to customers in stores. Ergonomics. Aesthetics and ergonomics go hand in hand. Can you hold the container with one hand? Can you open it with one hand, or do you need to put it on the counter to use both hands? The packaging should be symmetric and not oddly shaped. Irregularly shaped packaging won't fit nicely into shopping carts, bags, or fridges. Is the material easy to puncture? Does it break or crack if dropped on the floor? Or, as we have come to learn, it may not break or crack itself, but it might pop open if dropped accidentally. In another article, we covered the differences between PLA and PET-based packaging. Years of experience has shown us that PLA-based packaging is brittle. It can crack or shatter if opened improperly or dropped. If the base separate from the lid, or is it connected by a hinge? Is there a tamper-evident seal? A tearaway tab? Is it resealable? These are all things to consider when you're thinking about ergonomics. Cost. It would be nice to pay nothing for your inputs, right? Of course. But let's be realistic. Depending on the size, quantity, and material of the packaging, you can expect to pay 20 cents to $1 per piece. That price includes the base and lid if they're not combined as one unit. Petroleum-based packaging, like PET, will cost less than bio-based packaging, like PLA. Buying one box of packaging will cost more per box than buying it by the pallet. 64-ounce containers require more material than 16-ounce containers and will cost more per unit as a result. Finally, the environmental impact. Nowadays, most customers, especially younger generations, are increasingly prioritizing environmental stewardship. You should weigh if it's worth spending more on eco-friendly packaging. Will your packaging be single-use or reusable? Will it be made from PET, PLA, HDPE, or one of the many other plastics if it's single-use? If it's reusable, will it be made of glass, silicone, plastic, aluminum, or some other sturdy material? If it's reusable, how do you plan on collecting it from your customers? How do you plan on sterilizing it between uses? Reusable options will cost significantly more to purchase, but potentially save you money in the long run if you reuse them enough times. Consider the environmental impact to manufacture, transport, and then collect and clean or dispose of the packaging. Although it is beyond the scope of this blog, something we did for my company, is we paid a graduate student at the local university to read a handful of what are called life cycle assessments, LCAs, that go into the actual environmental impact it takes to uh, source the raw ingredients for in this case, piece of packaging, source the raw ingredients, transport them, process them, create the package, and then what it takes in terms of environmental impacts to dispose of that packaging. So these reports, these LCAs, look at all steps within the scope, generally a defined scope of the life cycle of that packaging, and it will sort of read out at the end of the study how much water does it use, how much land, how much greenhouse gases does it put off. And so if you really wanted to get into the nitty gritty, you can compare each of these materials, whether it's glass and you have a reusable container versus a single-use PET container. The field of LCA thinking is new and LCAs are complicated, but it is worth looking into. So we have a whole separate blog that is not worth a sort of podcast or audio version, but you should go look at it. It is a pretty comprehensive North American buyer's guide for different packaging providers. For beginners, the bottle box is great for recycled PET-based packaging. Good Natured is good for bio-based packaging like PLA. Same with Good Start packaging. We personally use Good Start packaging for the first 3 years of Piedmont Microgreens when we used PLA compostable based packaging. But eventually, we'll get into the next section. What we did was switch from PLA back to PET because it's cheaper, but also because we did, like I said, look at the LCAs and we found that the environmental impacts were not objectively less with a bio-based packaging than with a petroleum-based packaging. So best for bulk is we used to use Lacerda. We had a few problems with them. So now we get Eatery Essentials packaging, a PET-based packaging from Eatery Essentials through an intermediary. So in conclusion, decide where you'll sell your microgreens. What factors matter to you and your customers, like environmental impact. If you only plan on selling to local home consumers, it's more feasible to use reusable containers to package your microgreens because you're going to have a more intimate relationship with them where they're really going to express the importance of environmental friendliness to you. And so you can build those relationships. I can guarantee, though, that most chefs don't care, and it would be a waste of your time to try to do some sort of reusable packaging program where you take it back after each use. You need to decide if you'll prefer a cost-effective disposal option when working with distributors. You'll need to make trade-offs in one category to maximize the benefits of another category. You can't buy the cheapest option and expect it to be eco-friendly and reusable. So it's sort of a sliding scale for each of these 5 parameters. With that being said, I'll wrap it up with a quick note about crop planning and order management, which is that most farms hit a point where sticky notes and their own memory just don't cut it anymore for managing their farm, which is exactly why we built Microgreen Manager. It keeps your blends, your yields, all your orders, the trays you need to plant, all the tasks associated with production in your farm, super organized. Even as your farm scales, it works great if you have 5 trays or 500 trays in production. We've used it to stay sane as we've grown at Piedmont Microgreens, and it's available for everybody to use. So check it out. There is a 30-day free trial. You get access to all the wonderful features in our Pro plan. And then at the end of the 30 days, you can decide if you want to stay on a paid tier or if you want to downgrade it to the free forever plan and use it at your leisure. You can start right away at microgreenmanager.com. Thanks for listening.